Today's podcast involves a senior couple who seem to be enjoying their retirement. They were headed home from their apartment in Florida to their home in New York as they did every spring. But somewhere in between, they seemed to vanish into the ether. Let's talk about Charles and Catherine Romer. I did my usual internet search as well as newspaper archives to research this case. I also want to mention a few other resources. There is a video on YouTube from Adventures with Purpose concerning this case that is interesting. I also want to point out a very well-researched episode on this mystery done by my friend Stephen Pacheco's Trace Evidence podcast, so it is worth checking out as well. Charles Romer, 73, and Catherine Romer, 75, were referred to as snowbirds. They would leave their frigid home in Scarsdale, New York, and spend the winters in their luxury fifth-floor high-rise apartment at the Seaview Hotel in Bal Harbour, Florida. Charles Romer had owned the apartment since the 1940s, and he was a retired oil executive from Sinclair Oil. Catherine Romer was left a large sum of money from her late husband and enjoyed an active social life. They would make this 1,400-mile trek every winter. However, this past winter, they had decided to fly to Florida and have their car shipped to them. When it was time to return home in the spring, however, the couple fell up to making the drive themselves. On Tuesday morning, April 8, 1980, the Romers packed up their belongings in their custom 1978 black Lincoln Continental and headed north towards their home in New York. They spent the day driving and decided to stop for the night in Brunswick, Georgia. They checked into the Holiday Inn just off I-95 at 3:51 p.m. What actually happened after the Romers checked into the hotel is one of the biggest mysteries of all. Nothing seemed amiss until 2 days later, on April 10th, when the hotel maid noticed the Romers' belongings were untouched and alerted the hotel manager. Even then, there didn't seem to be much cause for concern. It was initially thought the couple was out sightseeing, as their car was also gone from the parking lot. Concern was raised and a search started on April 12th, 2 days after the Romers were scheduled to arrive home. Mr. Romer's son, Charles Romer Jr., had tried to reach his father and stepmother on April 11th and 12th, but figured they were busy when they didn't answer. He was starting to worry, so he decided to phone the South Carolina resort hotel they were scheduled to stay at on April 9th to see when they checked out. The answer would turn his concern into sheer panic. The couple had never even checked in. Now everyone was concerned as to the well-being of the retired couple. Helicopters, airplanes, search dogs, and four-wheel drive vehicles were utilized to comb 400 miles of coastline, marsh, swamps, and timberland. Photographs of the couple and their vehicle were distributed between Savannah, Georgia, and the Florida state line. The couple's hotel room was full of their clothes and belongings, as well as a detailed journal that Charles always kept. The last entry was dated April 7th, the day before the couple left to return home. There was also a half-empty bottle of scotch with 2 glasses, seeming to indicate that the couple had enjoyed a drink before leaving that fateful night. A newspaper article even states that Mr. Romer phoned the couple's maid in Scarsdale while on their trip from Florida, telling her that they would be home April 10th and to have the glasses chilled for cocktail hour. The couple's New York and Florida apartments were searched, and they were both in good order and looked just like they had left it. The only thing authorities could do was try to find the car and hope that the couple was still with it. Sadly, the case grew cold very quickly. There were a few scant supposed sightings of the couple, but none that could be verified. One sighting is a man at their hotel claims he witnessed the couple talking to a younger couple thought to have been from Florida. There was a cluster of restaurants not far from the hotel, and a police officer believes he spotted their distinctive car parked there later the day that they disappeared. There was also a Georgia Highway Patrol officer that believed he saw the couple's car about an hour after the couple checked into the hotel. The officer was said to only remember the sighting because of the couple's personalized plates, CRR-CBR. Oddly enough, the patrolman says the car was headed towards Florida. The ground searches continued for months, but there was a frustrating lack of any clues. There was a theory speculated as to what may have happened that, if true, would put an even darker cast on the couple's disappearance. As stated, the Romers were a wealthy couple. Their car was very valuable, as well as Mrs. Romer would usually be wearing several thousands of dollars of diamond and gold jewelry at any given time. Their hotel room was also reported as having had tens of thousands of dollars of jewelry left inside. Could the couple have been targeted and ultimately be victims of a robbery? The Romers were said to be very regimented and kept to a strict schedule, with Mr. Romer even keeping a detailed account of the couple's daily activities in his journal. It is also reported the couple would always stay at the same hotels on their drive back. Is it possible someone knew that they would be arriving at that hotel on that day? Or someone perhaps seeing them check in at the hotel pulling up in the very expensive car with Catherine Romer wearing valuable jewelry followed them that night. Mr. Romer's son had speculated at the time that perhaps something had happened to them in the parking lot of the hotel. There was even a mention by the police of possible Miami jewel thieves having followed them from Florida to their hotel in Georgia. The Romers, who had been married for 5 years, each had sons from previous marriages. Their children were very proactive in searching for their parents and were completely baffled by their disappearance. They hired private investigators, but they were even stumped as there was absolutely no trace of the couple to be found anywhere. As one of the sons stated, "So far there hasn't been a trace, not a shred of evidence. It's absolutely unreal, eerie." George Baker, a volunteer rescue diver, was one of the many to search for the Romers in the days and months after the disappearance. Although they were unsuccessful, Baker has continued in the many years since, making many dives to try to find the couple and return them to their family. The Romers' disappearance was now as cold as the Scarsdale winters they would escape from, but a possible tip would come in 2004 that, if true, may help to shed some light as to what happened that fateful day in 1980. An unidentified woman had spoken with George Baker in 2004 and had an interesting story to tell. She said that her husband was a delivery man working that night in Brunswick. He claimed that he was run off the road the night of April 8th by none other than a black Lincoln Continental. After hearing of the couple's vanishing, the handyman took this information to the police. It is speculated that with all the tips that poured in initially, perhaps this one wasn't noticed. The delivery man has since passed away, but his widow was able to give proof that he was in that area on that day. The area he was delivering in is an area that George Baker would later search, but found no trace of the couple. Sadly, that would be the only possible clue that has surfaced in many years, and the case is, and almost always has been, ice cold. I do want to talk about another case that is sometimes brought up along with this mystery. I'm not sure if there was any connection, but it is worth mentioning. It concerns another retired oil exec and his wife that lived just 20 minutes from Brunswick in Sea Island, Georgia. The couple, also wealthy, was found murdered in their extravagant home on July 30th, 1983. William and Merrill Roberts had been dead for 4 days when they were found in their bathrooms, nude with their heads covered and their breathing obstructed. Their cause of death was said to be slow suffocation. There were 2 arrests in the case soon after their bodies were discovered. One of the suspects, Theodore Woodard, ingested the weed killer paraquat when the police were closing in on him and died from the effects of the poison a few days later. The other suspect, Kenneth Bernard Blanks, was charged with the couple's murder and an additional murder of Brunswick cab driver George Francis. All 3 murders were said to have been a robbery motive. Blanks was convicted in 1984 and sentenced to death. As far as my thoughts on the disappearance, I feel that one of 2 things could have happened. Sadly, I do believe that the roamers died the same night they went missing. Considering their obvious outward signs of wealth and leaving their winter home near Miami, which was an area known for jewel thieves at that time, I think that they could have been robbed and murdered. It's hard to know whether their car was disposed of with them, perhaps in the water, or possibly resold or taken apart and gotten rid of. Also, the 2 possible sightings of the couple's car, one going in the opposite direction they would have been headed in, and the other one driving erratically, may also point to someone else driving their car. I also think another very plausible reason for them never returning was a tragic accident. Charles Romer was 73 and had just spent several hours on the road and was no doubt fatigued. If the Scotch bottle setting is accurate, it seems he may have had some alcohol before getting back in his car. The tiredness and possible effects of the alcohol could have combined to impair him, and he could have taken a wrong turn and drove into the water. There are quite a few bodies of water in the area. The couple had stayed in that area before, but it is highly possible that he was not that familiar with the entire area and could have gotten lost, especially if driving in the dark. Then in early November of 2024, more than 40 years after the disappearance, there would be some activity in this case. Jason Souhrada from Myrtle Beach found out about the Romer's disappearance on the internet and was intrigued by the case. He looked up the area where the Romers were thought to have disappeared from and saw a few nearby bodies of water. He decided to go and check a few of them out that were near the couple's hotel. To his amazement, and using his homemade sonar device, Souhrada captured images of a car. He then contacted the Sunshine State sonar team to dive the pond. Law enforcement was also brought in. A car and some human remains were found. The car was a black Lincoln Continental, the same kind that the Romers were last seen in. Law enforcement also noticed that each headrest in the front seat of the car had a monogram that matched Charles and Catherine's. Some bones were also found, and eventually the car and the remains were identified. In an amazing turn of events, and after 44 years, Charles and Catherine Romer were finally found. Now, if the fact that the Romers were found wasn't shocking enough, there was something else revealed that was even more shocking. The second shocking thing was where the Romers were found. It was in a pond just 50 yards from the Holiday Inn where the couple had checked in. So for 44 years, Charles and Catherine Romer were sitting in their watery grave on the exact same property where they were last seen in only 7 feet of water. I know what you're thinking because I'm thinking the same thing. So now to answer that question and give us more details on the amazing recovery is Jason Souhrada, the person who actually found the Romer's car. So today on the podcast we have Jason Souhrada. He is actually the person that found the Romers. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
So how did you first hear about the Romers' disappearance?
I follow multiple missing person groups and pages on social media. I'm not exactly sure which was the initial video that I watched, but I do know that I had seen one stood out to me the most was the one with Adventures with Purpose.
Yeah, that was a good one. So when did you first visit the area?
I think it was right before Thanksgiving. I think like the very first week of November, I think.
Oh, okay. So what day was it that you first saw the car? And now tell us, you would first tell us about your research before you went there.
If I got this down correctly, I think it was like November 2nd or 3rd that I went down there the first time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the day that you actually
put the sonar and saw something?
I take it would have been the second or the third. I always take it with me when I go down and decide to scan some bodies of water that I researched on the maps and decided to look into.
Now, we had just talked about Adventures with Purpose did a dive, but you don't believe that was the correct hotel, right?
Yeah, they looked into the case and did some research on their own and made a video looking for the roamers, but I noticed they had went to a newer Holiday Inn. There's no way this Holiday Inn existed back in the day.
Yeah.
So I looked it up on Google Earth, and there was definitely at this Holiday Inn they were at. It was just trees there. There was no building there or anything. So I did a lot of research in trying to locate where this Holiday Inn was at. Which later in their video they did, admit to that was not the exact hotel. They had found out later in the video, but it took me a while to figure out where the hotel was at. I was looking for older buildings. Someone said that had told them in that video that it was further south, pointed in the direction of a building that was not a Holiday Inn at the time that they were there. But it was, long story short, that was the wrong building also. It was actually the opposite side of the interstate that the Holiday Inn turned out being at.
Oh, okay. So now you put the sonar in. Now, what was going through your mind when you first thought that you saw something?
Well, a bit of a backstory I'd like to tell you about. Has different things point me in different directions, and I will look into something and just kind of feel that I need to go check something. So back a few years ago, my mom passed away, and she was given 3 years to 3 months. No, 3 months to 3 years to live. And she ended up passing away 33 days later. So the number 3 is kind of stuck with me, and it kind of has popped up a lot since she passed away. And this is another case that I've looked into prior to my first case that I've solved. But the number 3, once I saw it, when I started looking into the research of the pond behind the hotel, I saw that the pond was on a lot that didn't belong to the hotel. So I was trying to find the property owner, and the acreage for that lot is 3.33.
Wow.
So at the time when I'm doing this research, I'm in college still, so I'm doing some college classes in Florence, South Carolina. So I'm on my lunch break, and I'm just kind of looking into this case, and I see, okay, so what if I wanted to leave from here and go there? How far away is it? So I pulled it up, and from Florence, South Carolina to this hotel, it showed me it was 3 hours and 33 minutes of a travel distance. So I told my wife, I was like, I gotta go check this pond. I gotta see what's going on down here at this hotel. But prior to all of this, I had contacted the hotel, which is now, I think, a Royal Inn. I had contacted them and asked them if they had any old documentations of the hotel. Did it used to be a Holiday Inn? And she said that it was not, that to her knowledge, that it was a Holiday Inn. She did find an old map and sent me a picture of it. But that still wasn't a Holiday Inn. Still didn't show a Holiday Inn. I don't know how old this map was. But the pond was directly across from the room 149 that the roamer stayed in. So I was like, maybe he had a heart attack or stroke or some kind of medical event, and he ended up driving off in this pond. So I was like, I need to go check these ponds. So it kept eating away at me for days, and I was like, I told my wife, I have to go down there.
Wow. And so when you first, did you know right away that it was a vehicle that you were seeing on the screen?
I did not. So there's 2 ponds. There's one behind it and one to the side of the hotel.
Okay.
So the pond right beside their room is what drew my immediate attention. So I went there, I checked it, and I saw what looked like a car on sonar, but I have no way. I didn't have an underwater drone, or I don't dive. I didn't get in the water. And it ended up being a lot deeper than I thought it was. So I ended up contacting Adam Brown to come check it out. And make a second trip back down there and to see if that was a car, which it turned out not being a car. So we decided to check the pond in front of the hotel, or to the side of the hotel also.
Oh, okay. So now which pond were they in? The one closest to their room?
No, it was the one on the other side of the hotel.
Okay, was that near a parking lot back then? Do you know?
Yes, it was near a parking lot. There was actually the building of that parking lot. It used to be Howard Johnson's, some kind of restaurant. So the assumption is that they checked into their room because all of her luggage and jewelry and stuff was still there in the room, and then left to go over there to eat. Of course, that's at the complete opposite end of the hotel. So drove their car over there, and maybe he had a medical emergency there, and ended up in that pond.
Oh, okay. So maybe it was so dark they didn't see the pond. Yeah.
It's a possibility, but it was a good, I think, 120 feet that he would have had to drive off road to get into the pond.
Oh, okay. Wow. So now I'm sure you had to have such an excitement to think that you possibly could have found him, because you knew what case this didn't just happen. You just didn't happen to see a car. You knew exactly what case it was going to belong to.
Right. Yeah.
So
when we scanned that pond, we saw two objects in the pond. One definitely looked to be more of a car than the other. So we ended up spending a lot of time on that, and didn't get a whole lot of time to check the other one.
Now you did find another car, correct?
Correct. There were two cars in that pond.
And are you still trying to find out how the other car got there?
According to what we were told by police, is the other car had been run off in there by a drunk driver a long time ago, and they just left it.
Okay, and it was a pretty rare car, right?
Yeah, it was a Ford Torino, I believe.
Yeah. So, and I will say that you don't get credit widely for finding the couple, which I think is a shame, because of course you are not a diver, so you've contacted someone else to actually go down there and get eyes on this car, correct?
Correct. Once Adam and I had got done inspecting the first vehicle that we found in the pond, we were running out of time and daylight, and didn't have the battery to go and using his underwater drone to check out the other object, which ended up turning out to be the roamer's car, because I had contacted Sunshine State Sonar before I left there if they could come to see if they could come check it out. Sent them all this sonar scans and everything, and they felt like that could definitely be their car. So they came up and without telling me or anything, they just came up within like 2 or 3 days after I called them. I had to go back to class. I had clinicals to get back to, and finals to study for and such. But they ended up getting in there and checking out the other object that we weren't able to spend any time on, and it ended up being the car.
Wow. And even though in the media you don't really get credit, the Romer family specifically thanked you. And I did read their quote, yeah. So.
Yeah, I always contact family before I, get too far into a case, just to try to get as much detail as I can about the missing person.
Yeah, that's wise. So the biggest question that I have, and probably the audience has, is why wasn't that pond searched earlier, or was it?
So there were two divers that searched that pond, and they actually searched it twice, supposedly. One has already passed away. The other one was younger than the first guy that had searched for them. They had both dove on this pond, and the water, even Sunshine State Sonar, admitted to the water being so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It's just this very black water in that pond. So even if you were to go in there with a flashlight and look around, unless you ran into it and felt it, you wouldn't know it was there, just by diving. So how they missed a 20-foot car in that pond, is beyond me. Or some people speculated that maybe they did know it was there. One of the divers did know it was there and just kind of kept hush about it and was going to come back to it later. But I don't.
Wow.
I have no proof of that. That's just what somebody had said.
Yeah. Now tell us how many feet of water their car was found in.
So the water was 7 foot deep at the time.
Wow.
Right.
Do we have any idea how deep it would have been back then?
No idea. The car was sunk probably 1.5 feet, maybe up to middle of the doors, I think.
Yeah, and it's just so chilling to see the pictures, their belongings. It's just it's a visual of this poor couple that had to have their watery grave for 44 years. And the family was just so relieved, because in their mind, they really thought that they'd been robbed and killed.
Right.
So,
and that's what it's about. I'm just trying to, help families find closure. I spend money out of my own pocket to go do this.
That's amazing. And this is just like a hobby, something that you just do in your spare time.
Yeah. I mean, I only got into it because I've seen other YouTubers, or I'm not a YouTuber, but I've seen YouTubers doing it, and I wanted to be able to help, families. I wanted to give someone that sense of closure to, I don't know, it was just a desire I wanted to feel, I guess.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the sonar that you use. You actually made it yourself, correct?
Correct. It's currently in a patent pending state. Working on getting a utility patent on it, and I'm trying to get some companies interested in it, so that way I can move forward with the patent process. But it's existing products that are already on the market. I just put them all together and repurpose them. That's all.
Oh, and there's a GoFundMe, and I will put a link to it because you need some money to get all the patents and everything. And now tell me why you said there are of course sonars out there, but what is specific to yours, and what kind of bodies of water would it help search?
So I don't have a boat. The first case I looked into that I solved using this device, it's the reason that I built this device is because I don't have a boat. I didn't have sonar. I didn't have anything really at the time. But there was a particular body of water I wanted to search in this other case, the original case I got started with. I had watched 2 dive teams search the area a total of 4 times, and I kept questioning. I was like, well, why are they not checking this body of water? So it's on the main route to these guys' house. Why are they not looking here? So I drove the 3.5 hours there, which also a funny story. It's 3 hours and 33 minutes from my home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I drove the 3.5 hours there to see why they didn't look here. And for the most part, that body of water was really shallow, but there was another area that I could tell was deeper. So, and that spot was close to the road. So I didn't have a boat. Didn't have sonar. I had to buy all this stuff and put it all together myself. I probably spent, $2,000, putting all this together.
Wow.
And I take it up there and put it in the water and checked it out. And that's pretty much, that's where they were. And that's in that one spot. And there's no way to get a boat in there. You could drive a car off in there if you wanted to, or you could, slide a kayak or something off in there. But it was not a spot that you're supposed to have boats, just due to the way that there's some pumps that pump water into this body of water from the other side of the bridge. It's dammed off so water doesn't backflow into the town and flood. But when it rains, that dam, the water builds up, so it would pump water from one side to the other. And that other side over there was a big, 12-foot deep hole, which is where these guys' car was at.
Oh, wow. So now talk about, have you found any other cars of missing people under the water?
Well, the case I'm talking about now was the first case. It was 3 men missing since 1982 in Washington, North Carolina. They had left the bar one night and never made it home. There was speculation that they had went to New York because there was a police report saying that the car was spotted in New York, and a guy with the car owner's driver's license was arrested or pulled over or ticketed or something in New York. But I don't know exactly what the story is with that, because how would they make it all the way back home and end up in a pond 3 blocks from their house?
Yeah. Can you tell us the names?
Yeah.
If you remember them.
Oh, yeah. It's Michael Norman, and let's see. Gotta pull it up real quick.
The audience might want to Google it and read about the case.
So it was Bill Clifton, Michael Norman, David McMicken, Bill Clifton, and Michael Norman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were last seen at a bar, December 10th, 1982. And, they never made it home. And like I said, I saw this body of water, and these dive teams didn't check it. And I had to go. I was like, I need to go see what's going on. Why are they not checking this? And sure enough, that's where they were. And there wasn't even a car left at that time. I mean, if you pull it up on the internet, there's the engine, the tires, and the frame. That's pretty much all that was left.
Oh,
so
wow.
how the sonar picked that up,
Yeah, that's crazy. Now I know personally that you are working on several cases, right? You're kind of There's usually several that you've mentioned to me that you're...
Yeah, there's a few that I would like to look into. Ever since I've, finished my college program and started working, I don't have as much time as I had before. I was working before this. I was working 4 days a week and had 3-day weekends.
Yeah.
But now I'm working 5 days a week and it's just a 2-day weekends. And so it's hard to kind of get away and do some things. So if something is close enough, I will.
Yeah, I was going to say fairly local to you as well. You can't just fly everywhere.
The furthest I went was Mississippi to look into a case that another YouTuber or vlogger or whatever she was. Her name is. She goes by True Crime Mama. I don't know if you've seen her page or post or not, but she had mentioned something to me, and that it was a guy that was missing for since 20 years, I think. But that was a local guy to her area, but we ended up finding nothing the whole time we were there. But that's the furthest I've been. I would like to stay within the Carolinas, Georgia, the tri-state area, maybe Tennessee.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get you to go to Kentucky on a case too, so maybe eventually.
Maybe eventually.
There's unlimited amount of people that go missing in their cars. It's amazing, Yeah,
there's a whole map called on the internet. If you pull up mapthemissing.com, you can see a ton of people that's all they're about is it's all people missing in their vehicles.
Well, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that. So, well, Jason, best of luck, and it's great that you're doing such good things and you're continuing. I'm sure this won't be the last cases that you've solved. So
definitely not. There's a few, like I said, a few more that I'd like to solve locally. But especially with this case in North Carolina that as of like a couple of weeks ago, that the lady ended up being, alive and well. She had just left home. I mean, I wasted a couple of hours of my... I didn't get to go search for her, but I wasted a couple of hours online, writing down places to go search because she was right here in North Carolina, so...
Don't get me started on that case. That's a shame. But... Yeah. Okay, well, best of luck, and like I said, I will put a YouTube link because that's definitely a worthy cause to donate to. If you can get more of those made for different... And didn't you say several counties have even requested those?
There's a couple of county detectives have requested them. There's a case in particular in North Carolina, Greensboro, I believe it was, that it could have been very helpful for at least to have on hand. There was a Ring doorbell video that a lady had sent to me. That's like, I'm pretty sure he's in this pond, because the doorbell video shows him driving up over the bank, and then the doorbell video cuts off. And then she saw tire tracks going into the pond, but the police said, no, the water's not deep enough. They flew a drone over the pond and didn't see anything, so they wrote it off as he's not in there. And if they'd had my device, they would have found him right away.
Oh, wow.
Because that's where he was,
Yeah. Okay, well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us and letting us know the backstory of this amazing update. I couldn't believe when I heard about it. So,
thank you for having me.
Take care, and we'll have you on again soon.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
As we mentioned, although not getting a lot of attention in the media, Charles and Catherine Romer's family were grateful for Jason's discovery and their concerns being put to rest as to how they died. Here is their official statement on the discovery. We are deeply saddened and equally relieved that our grandparents Charles and Catherine Romer's 44-year mystery disappearance has been solved. While this discovery brings closure, it still has been very emotional. Sadly, Charles Romer Jr., Jim Romer, and Frank Heller are not with us to share this momentous turn of events and to know their parents will finally be laid to rest in peace. We want to express our gratitude to Glenn County Police, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and Sunshine State Sonar for their time, dedication, and expertise. A special appreciation and thanks go out to Jason Souhrada, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Jason pinpointed the exact location of the vehicle and shared his findings with all the agencies involved. This is such an amazing update to a case that had a lot of dark speculation, but in the end it was just a tragic accident. I'm so glad that the Romer's family now have answers that they waited over 40 years for. Now I want to talk about another couple that I recently heard about that also went missing with their car. You come across these cases from time to time. However, this one surprised me, as it actually occurred in 1929, when there were not a lot of vehicles on the road. Their names were Russell and Blanche Warren. They lived in a logging camp on the Bocochio River near Lake Crescent, Washington. Russell was 37 and worked as a logger. Blanche was 33 and a homemaker. The couple had 2 sons. Charles was 11 years old and Frank was 13. In June of 1929, Blanche would become ill and would be admitted to a hospital in Port Angeles, Washington. It isn't specified exactly what the illness was, but Blanche made a promise to her sons that she would be home by July 4th and they could all celebrate together as a family. It appears that she would keep her promise, as on July 3rd, 1929, Russell would leave his young sons with neighbors and would climb into his 1927 Chevy sedan and head about 50 miles to Port Angeles to pick his wife up from the hospital. It is said that she was discharged at 3:30 p.m., and it appears that the couple would run some errands as well. It is reported that they stopped to get some groceries and also purchased a new washing machine. However, this is where the story takes an unexpected, dark turn. Simply put, the Warrens never arrived home that day. None of their friends or family would ever hear from them again. The rumor mill would run rampant with speculation. It was a week before the newspapers would write about the couple's disappearance. The Warrens' 2 sons were taken in by some nearby tavern owners. Their relatives would describe their sons as frantic with grief, while their schoolmates would tease the boys that their parents had abandoned them. Clallam County Sheriff Jack Pike would spend much of the next 2 months searching for the couple and trying to figure out the real reason for the disappearance. He would eventually rule out that the couple just left and abandoned their young sons. It is said that Russell Warren had just paid his grocery bill, made 2 car payments, as well as just purchased a washing machine. Not the actions of someone that would just up and leave, stated Sheriff Pike. 6 weeks later, a motorist would report to the sheriff that he saw broken glass and tire tracks that appeared to run off the edge of Olympic Highway, now known as US 101. It was described back then as a rocky, winding road with no shoulders or guardrails. This would have been the route that the Warrens would have taken home from the hospital. Divers were sent to a depth of 78 feet, but they could not see the bottom. Despite their efforts, a search in the area would prove fruitless for the missing couple. According to Indian legend, the lake was bottomless. It is said whatever fell into Lake Crescent was lost forever. In September of 1929, the same year the couple went missing, the police closed the investigation. The Warrens' young sons would struggle after the disappearance. They waited for years for their parents to return, hopefully every time they would hear an unexpected knock on the door, hoping it was them. For a while they lived with Blanche's mother in Montana, even staying in an old chicken coop. They would eventually be separated and placed with different family members. The story of the sons proved to be just as tragic as their missing parents. According to an article in the LA Times, Frank would die at age 57 of acute alcoholism. In an eerie similarity, Charles was aboard his fishing boat south of Humboldt Bay in 1964 when it appears that it was struck by a larger ship. The wreckage of his boat, called the Mildred G., was found 15 miles south of the crash after another fisherman received a distress call, presumably from Charles. Unfortunately, Charles Warren is assumed to have drowned. His body has never been found. In 1954, an avid diver, Bob Queso, wanted to find a Spanish galleon. Upon research at the local library, he was disappointed to learn that they were never in that area. He came upon the Warrens' disappearance and was intrigued, especially about the Lake Crescent search. He would take notes from the articles about the police investigation, as well as study the geology of the lake. Having amassed a binder full of notes, him and a few dive buddies spent the summer searching the lake for the Warren couple or their car, but found nothing and gave up. Decades later, Bob Queso came across his binder full of notes on the Warren case again in the spring of 2001. He researched the disappearance again, gathering additional notes from the last 50 years. He then went to the main office of Olympic National Park and handed his binder to Park Ranger Dan Pontbriand. The ranger had never heard of the disappearance, but read the binder with interest. He had seen where Sheriff Pike and other law enforcement had retired, thinking the Warrens were in Lake Crescent. Ranger Pontbriand decided to find out for himself. Over the span of many months, mainly on the weekends, the ranger assembled a group of volunteer divers to look for the couple and their car in Lake Crescent. Sheriff Pike, during the original investigation, had referenced a spot in the lake called Madrona Point. All these years later, no one remembered exactly where it was, and it was no longer referenced on modern-day maps. It is said the spot goes from 400 to 600 feet to pockets as deep as 1,000 feet. They were able to locate Madrona Point on an old map. There is an area near that in modern-day times known as Ambulance Point due to its treacherous curves and is roughly 4 miles from the west end of the lake. The group now decided to focus its dive on that area. The road, now Highway 101, still skirts the lake shore, and the bank of the lake has a sharp drop referred to as an abyss. The water changes from aqua blue to dark blue to black. The park ranger alerted the Warrens family that they were doing dives in hopes of finding the couple. It is estimated that the group of volunteers did about 125 dives. Then in December of 2001, something was found, but was it related to the Warren disappearance? The divers would find something referred to as a small glass vase in 55 feet of water. It is said to be the kind that would come attached to a 1927 Chevrolet, the same type of car the Warrens drove. Later that month, in 85 feet of water, the divers would find another interesting clue. A Norge brand washing machine lid manufactured in the 1920s. Remember, the Warrens were said to have purchased a washing machine on the day of their fateful trip. Then almost 5 months later, the volunteer divers would finally solve this over 70-year-old mystery. Well, part of it anyway. They would find the couple's 1927 Chevrolet sedan laying on its side in 171 feet of water. However, the couple was not inside the car. The divers, in earlier dives, had also found 2 other old cars. The rangers learned that these 2 Fords had been stolen, stripped, and dumped into the lake by a theft ring in the 1930s. But where were the Warrens, and how and why had they been separated from their car? 2 years later, in late May of 2004, divers would answer their own question. Diver John Rawlings had dove 200 feet down and was coming back up when he spotted a fallen cedar tree in the water. Near the tree, he would spot a femur bone as well as a skull. Tests would eventually confirm the identity. Russell Warren had now been found. Russell Warren was found about 30 yards away from his car. They do believe that Blanche's remains are nearby as well. However, as far as I can tell, they've never been found. Judging by where the car and Russell's remains were found, Ranger Pontbriand has an educated guess on what may have happened that fateful day. As the couple's car approached Madrona Point, he theorizes Charles Warren may have fallen asleep at the wheel. He was often tired and had even told friends in the past that he had fallen asleep before on the drive to Port Angeles. If he did fall asleep, the couple may have hit the cedar tree that was eventually found underwater near Charles' remains and flipped onto its top into the water. The washing machine possibly flew out of the back of the car and may have even hit the couple or ejected them from the car. The car then probably floated on the surface before sinking and eventually coming to rest about 200 feet from shore. The family was grateful and relieved to know what happened to their loved ones. Sadly, both of the couple's sons would pass away before their parents were found, never getting the confirmation while they were alive that they didn't abandon them on purpose. The relatives had all but given up having any answers on this ice-cold case. Park Ranger Dan Pontbriand would go on to write about the search for the Warrens in a book released in 2014 titled The Missing Ones, A True Story. The couple's cousin shared her thoughts in a newspaper article on finally knowing what happened on that day back in 1929. She said, "It's hard to explain, but it makes a difference knowing what happened. Now we know where they are. It's a beautiful lake. We can think of the lake being Russell and Blanche's home forever, and that makes me real happy." As far as my thoughts on the Warren case, I think it's pretty easy to say what happened. For whatever reason, the couple ran off the road on their way home from the hospital and into the water. I do think that Blanche's remains are nearby, and it being 1929, and chances are the couple was not wearing a seatbelt if they were even equipped in cars that long ago. It isn't surprising that the couple's remains weren't found with their car. It is such a tragic story, made even worse by how their children struggled without them, but I am glad that the remaining family was eventually given the peace of mind in knowing what happened that day so long ago. As far as Charles and Catherine Romer, they seem to be living most retired couples' dreams. They were traveling the country and enjoying their life. It is the truest definition of the word mysterious to think what happened to them that night. The Warrens seem to have fallen victim to a tragic accident as well. Now that we finally have a resolution in both cases, we know for sure that the disappearances were sadly a case of "till death do us part." That concludes my podcast on the Romers and the Warrens. A special thanks to Jason Souhrada for his account of what it was like to find the Romers' vehicle. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave me a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube Radio, and Amazon Music. I also have a Patreon page where I post lesser-known missing persons cases. You can find all of my original articles on my website at Lost and Found Blogs. I also have social media pages under that name on Facebook, X, and Instagram. You can reach me via email at lostandfoundpodcast@yahoo. And remember that cold cases stay cold because their story stops getting told.